So therapy is often thought of as a powerful tool for personal growth and healing. It's natural to hope that it offers solutions to many of life's challenges. But some people approach therapy with the hope that it can miraculously change their life. Between this misconception and the fear that psychotherapy is all about brainwashing are many myths about the process. Today, we will be discussing how we can prepare for therapy, know what to expect, what to look out for in a good psychotherapist-client relationship. I'm peer sports specialist Nora, and we have Associate Psychologist Nastasia Tang.
Hello.
With us today. Let's talk about therapy for first-timers. Okay, so let's just set some expectations straight, because I think different people may have different expectations when it comes to what happens during therapy sessions, right? So I do have clients who come to me and let me know that, hey, like PSS Nora, I don't know if like my problems are big enough for a therapist to help me through them, or like what's going to happen during therapy sessions? Like, do I have to talk all the time, or what if I don't want to speak or I'm not comfortable speaking, right? So like, how do you differentiate between whether a person needs therapy, or rather than needs, maybe the better word would be benefits from therapy? Yeah, how do you assess that?
Yeah, so I think whether a person would benefit from therapy or whether they need therapy or not really depends on what are some of the problems they are facing at the moment and where do those problems stem from. So for example, if a person is facing a lot of stress and anxiety, the problem that brings out that stress and anxiety is more of like practical concerns, like maybe financial stress or lack of housing, so sometimes addressing these practical concerns can actually bring down that stress or anxiety, like providing financial aid or providing a shelter, right? So in that sense, psychotherapy might not be the most helpful option for this person. Another thing is maybe someone that is going through more transient kind of life situations, they might benefit more from counselling, to get through a tough period in their lives. Yeah. So I think what would determine whether a person would benefit from therapy or not, actually in IMH at least, we have this process called a psychotherapy review, where the person, when they get referred to psychology services, they go through this psychotherapy review where a triage psychologist would sort of identify their goals with them, maybe trying to see like what are some of the services that can best meet their needs. So in that sense, it's okay to come and then for the psychotherapy review and see whether therapy is something that could help. Yeah. So about your clients, like the questions that they have, whether their problems are big enough or not. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know, right? So sometimes going through that review process can actually help.
If you're considering therapy, there's a lot of unease there with not knowing what to expect also. But it's great that there's this psychotherapy review to help the client as well as the professional to figure out whether or not like this is something that will benefit them. That's great. That's great. I guess when it comes to therapy, we also need to assess the different types of needs, correct? Yeah. So for example, stigma can be very real. I think I myself have received therapies in the past, and I used to come to the session in a black cap with a black mask, with a black jacket, because I didn't want to be seen. Because I think even myself, I was learning to overcome stigma from society. I was thinking some clients may fear being seen going into clinics, right? And some clients may not even have a flexible enough schedule in order to attend therapy in person, especially if they're working, right? So what are some of the common barriers that clients that you've seen have faced?
Yeah, Nora, you're absolutely right. In fact, like going through the psychotherapy review clients, right, there are a lot of clients that bring out concerns about stigma, about being seen. Another very common concern, as you pointed out, is the work schedule.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, we do have quite an array of services that could match some of the concerns that they are having. So some clients, they might feel more comfortable with learning on their own, remotely. We actually have this program called ICBT, Internet-Based Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, that actually allows the client to learn from module-based programs on a platform. And this would help the client, learn therapy skills, learn skills that they can help to cope with some of the issues that they are facing, and with the guidance of a psychologist. So the psychologist would call them and then sort of guide them through these modules as well. So they're not totally on their own, but also they have the comfort and flexibility of learning skills at home. And especially if they're very busy, right? Work schedule is difficult to juggle, right? These modules can be done, over the weekend, in the evenings. So it's really something that they can consider. Another thing that they can consider is maybe online therapy as well. So we do provide like online video call sort of therapy, or even referrals to our partner organizations. So they can have that flexibility of doing therapy remotely or doing therapy at somewhere that is nearer to their home or at a more convenient location. Some of these partnered organizations also provide therapy over the weekends or in the evenings as well. So for the working crowd, that might be something that they're looking for.
Right. Oh, maybe something I could consider as well.
Yeah. So lastly, there's also another format of therapy called group therapy that can be very helpful for people who want to learn things in a group. So in group therapy, they learn skills, and then the group dynamics actually provides an environment for them to practice those skills that they learn in a safe environment. The sharing between group members also provides some kind of support, as well as make the people feel less lonely in their experiences. So a lot of the times when we're suffering from some difficult mental health situations, right, we'll feel very alone in our situation. But learning from a group, you actually realize that actually you're not alone in this, and learning from each other is also very helpful. So sometimes learning some skills, right, and then troubleshooting together, you actually learn from each other. Oh, what are the multiple ways that I can sort of adapt this skill to suit my needs? Yeah, so in a sense, group therapy can be very helpful in that way as well. So just various forms of modes that therapy can come in to fit the needs. So yeah, going through that psychotherapy review process is also a conversation you can have of trying to find a service that best suits the needs.
Wow, I didn't know that there were so many different types of therapy. I think that's like great. It's great that there are different types of therapy that can suit like the client's needs as well. Yeah, very reassuring hearing that there's so many forms that you can choose from to decide, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think when I talk to some of the clients that I support as well, some of them are considering therapy or maybe even are already seeing a therapist, right? I realize some of the common fears or expectations that come up from these clients are things like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, how is the process going to be? Do I really have to open up about every single thing that I go through? I had a client who came up to me and then he was like, Princess Nora, I think my doctor is going to refer me for therapy, right? So if I go for these therapy sessions, I finish every single session, right? Means I will be cured, right? Yeah, so the expectation is quite high there.
Yeah. So I think it's quite understandable, right? If you're going for a treatment, you want to be cured in that sense. But then I guess the question would be, what do you mean by cure? So what does cured look like? Yeah. So one common unrealistic expectations that people would have is that cured means I will never ever feel anxious anymore, or I'll never ever feel sadness anymore. Yeah, which is an unrealistic expectation. Unfortunately, with these distressing emotions, although they are distressing, right, they do provide some kind of function. Yeah, so for example, anxiety. Anxiety in the primitive times, in our caveman days, anxiety actually helped us to stay away from danger. For example, if you see a cave that is very dark, you won't immediately think, oh, let's walk in and see what happens. Yeah, you'll feel like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go there. I don't know what's lurking inside.
Right.
So anxiety actually helps to keep us safe. In the modern day also, actually, anxiety helps to keep us safe by making us more alert in certain situations. So example, if you're driving on a dimly lit street at night, maybe you'll be more alert to sort of like avoid any accidents happening. Or when you're rushing deadlines, you suddenly feel like, oh, okay, I need to really focus. So that's actually anxiety helping us. Yeah, but when this anxiety or any other distressing emotion becomes a problem, it's when it affects us socially or occupationally. Yeah, so when anxiety stops us from doing the things that we want to do. And in that sense, right, therapy can help to teach skills to manage the anxiety. so that when you go into that situation, it's not that you don't feel anxious anymore. You still feel the anxiety, but you have learned skills to cope with the anxiety so that we don't allow anxiety to dictate what we can or cannot do. Yeah. So the more realistic goal in this sense would be to learn skills to manage that distressing emotion so that they can continue to do the things that they want to.
Wow, that was a very elaborate, very great explanation to what I asked. I like that. Yeah. Thanks for helping to explain what sort of expectation to have when a person decides to seek help through therapy, right? So you laid a pretty good foundation with regards to like what the client can understand about what to expect from therapy, right? So what about what the client should expect of themselves? Like, how would you advise listeners out there to prepare for therapy?
Okay, yeah. I think coming into therapy, sometimes when people think like, okay, it's time, I think I want to see a therapist, they might actually have an idea in mind of what therapy can help them do already. And so I think it's very important to put that idea in words, like, a goal, a goal that they can work towards in therapy, because in therapy, it's usually a collaborative process. So the therapist and client, think of like the therapist and client as a team, and we are a team and we want to work towards a goal. So it's like a pilot and co-pilot, right? You want to fly towards the same destination. You don't want to one pilot turn here, one pilot turn there.
Right.
Then the plane will go haywire.
Yes.
So in that sense, having that goal is very important.
Okay.
Some of the helpful questions to ask might be like, what makes you want to come for therapy? And also, what would you hope to achieve through therapy? And if you were to achieve this, like this goal that you have achieved, what are some of the changes that you would be able to see in your lives? For example, behavior changes or changes in relationship with other people. So this might be some of the things you want to think of lah. A lot of clients do come in with a very vague goal. For example, like, I want to be happier, or I just want to feel better. So these vague goals are not very helpful, because when you go into therapy with a vague goal, the direction is not very clear. So for example, if you go into a taxi and you tell the driver, hey, can you bring me somewhere with nice food or not? So what the driver think is nice food and what you think, it might be very different. So in that sense, that specific goal can really help to tune into what you really want out of therapy. So that thought of like, oh, if I was happier, what are some of the things that I would be doing? What are some of the things that I think I could do if I was happier? So another thing that therapy can help clients achieve is to maybe become more aware of their emotions. So most often than not, sometimes we feel a distressing emotion and then we just sort of brush it off or we react to it, but we don't actually get to bring ourselves to that awareness, labeling that emotion, and then also trying to help ourselves cope better with that emotion. Based on that emotion, what are some of the thoughts that comes out from it? And maybe some of these thoughts might not be very helpful thoughts. Which drives us to, unhelpful behavior, and then a vicious cycle happens.
Right.
So that's something that therapy can help clients do as well. Maybe I could bring out some of the more common sort of unrealistic expectations in therapy. When I go through the psychotherapy review process, sometimes clients do request that, therapy help them to change behavior of others. So that is an unrealistic expectation in a way, because psychotherapy, at least, it focuses on changes within an individual. So changes within ourselves and what we can control, which is our own behaviors and also how we interpret the thoughts as well as other people's behaviors or actions. So that is something that would be changes within an individual. But what can happen through therapy, through psychotherapy, is that by being more aware of how our actions can affect our experiences with others, it can also help us to change the way we interact with others, maybe communicating more effectively. And that might help to change the behavior of people around us, although it's not guaranteed, because how others people react to us is not really within our control.
Right.
For clients that do find that, they really have difficulties with their family members, with people, their loved ones, then I guess something that they could be open to is maybe trying systemic systemic therapy or family therapy. That kind of therapy allows for the client and their loved ones to go through that therapy journey together and foster healthier relationships.
Okay, so there are versions that are available for the family to work together.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
Great. That's great.
So another common unrealistic expectations that I do hear from clients seeking therapy is the expectation that they want therapy to continue on for life because they want a professional emotional support person.
Right.
Yeah. And understandably, it can be quite handy, right? To have someone that you can consult whenever. Yeah. But that is actually quite unhelpful for the client actually. Ultimately, the goal of therapy is to help the client to gain coping skills so that they are able to cope independently outside of therapy. And when they are able to learn those coping skills, learning effective communication with other people, they naturally would be able to form healthy relationships outside of therapy and have that organic emotional supports in their life. So usually for clients, right, we would try to help them achieve their goals and then let them have a go at being independent. So they graduate from therapy, then they try to cope independently. And of course, in the future, if they do find that they are facing another problem that requires therapy again, they can always come back. But I don't think it's healthy to cling on to therapy because that becomes like a dependence on therapy as well. Yeah. And then when you cling on to your therapist, right, you might not have the opportunity to gain that independence, the confidence of being able to cope on your own. Yeah. So helping the client to become independent, is actually part of that therapy process.
Right. I like the emphasis on helping the client to prepare to be independent for themselves rather than to rely on the therapist. Because I think there's some similarity between the expectations that the clients have for therapy as well as for peer support as well. Yeah. Where they think sometimes clients may think that, now I have this person who I'm relying on for support. I don't need to worry really. If there's anything that I go through, I can just ask this person. But yeah, I think in a sense, we want to be there to support them until they are ready to be standing on their own 2 feet, right?
That's right.
When it comes to disclosure, is it necessary for a person to tell their family, friends, or even colleagues that they are seeking help?
Okay, so this one is... Firstly, it's totally up to them, like whether they want to tell their family members or their loved ones. I know people usually prefer to maybe tell someone that is close to them because going through therapy is a journey.
Yep, definitely.
And so, telling someone close to them, at least there's a place where they can share their experiences. And sometimes talking about it helps. But whether they want to share with their loved one or not depends on whether the environment is safe. So if someone is on the fence about whether to tell a family member they are going for therapy, maybe one of the ways that they can approach it is to test waters. So for example, they can share that, a distant friend or a distant relative that they know is starting to seek therapy and gauge what the reaction is. So if the reaction is quite bad or very unsupportive, then maybe they might want to pull back and not tell. So I think a lot of the times it depends on how families react. In fact, I have clients who either intentionally or unintentionally disclose that they are going for mental health help, to seek mental health help, right? So for example, one of my clients, actually, the family found out that they were going for therapy when they were cleaning their room. And for this client, the family was quite nice. Family actually told the client that, hey, we know that you're going through this. You're going for to seek treatment, and we don't have to know about what is it about right now. But if you want to share, feel free to share with us. So the family actually gave them the space to share at their own time, and the family even started to drive them for the sessions. So I think it made the client have a corrective experience of what the family is like. Unfortunately, not everyone's going through having such a helpful kind of reaction. So I had clients who unfortunately, when the family found out, the family became very defensive and say that there's nothing wrong with you, there's no reason why you're going for this kind of treatment. And every time they are trying to step out of their house, the family would ask, are you going for that treatment again? Are you going to see your psychologist? Are you going to see your psychiatrist? And so that was very unhelpful for my client. In the end, my client had to lie about, no longer seeking treatment because that was starting to become very hurtful.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think sharing or not sharing is totally up to the person. Like, it's not a must. Yeah.
Thanks for helping to clarify that and sharing some anecdotal examples as well, because I feel like this disclosing to family members or friends can be a very complicated challenge sometimes, right? Deciding who to tell, what to tell. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking in terms of like a situation where a client wants to let their family know and they've never had a conversation about it before and they want to open up to their family member about this, right? Yeah, perhaps what would that conversation look like? Shall we do like a little role play maybe?
Okay, sure,
To show an
sure.
example.
Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps I will be the parent. Okay. And then you could be the client who is going to try to let the parent know that you are seeking help.
All right. So depending on your reaction, I would see whether I want to tell more or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'll go in with the test waters approach. All right. So, hey, mom,
Yep.
you know Tommy, my friend from primary school.
Yep.
You remember?
Yeah, your good friend, right?
Yeah. We haven't contacted in a while lah, but recently he contacted me, and then I learned that actually he's facing a lot of stress in school. Yeah, he was facing a lot of stress lah. So it was so stressful for him that he couldn't do his assignments.
Ayo, must be not managing the time well lah, like that, right? Stressed out because of assignment.
Yeah. So he was trying to manage his time, but unfortunately it was very difficult for him lah. So actually he saw the school counselor.
The counselor. Counselor is do what one?
Oh, so this counselor is this person in the school that talk to students lah who are having some difficulty with their study, or having some difficulties in their life situations. Yeah, so Tommy thought that it would be a good idea to try to talk to someone professional to help him, see whether he can manage his time better, manage his stress better.
The family know or not that he's seeing counselor?
That one I'm not sure leh.
Wow, very paiseh leh, if like that. The family were to find out that he's seeking help from someone else, right? Yeah, because this counselor will ask a lot of questions, one, right?
I think maybe maybe we'll ask a lot of questions, but hopefully, going for this one also can help him. If not like that, he fail everything.
Okay lah. As long as he does what is good for him, I think okay, right? Then you leh, you coping or not?
Oh yeah, I think right now also I am feeling a bit stressed. But I'm trying to find ways to cope also lah.
Anything you can tell mommy, okay? Don't have to keep to yourself. Okay?
Okay, thanks mom.
Okay, so this would be an example of a more positive interaction, I would think, is it?
Yeah.
Between a mom and child, right?
I think, definitely in our culture, unfortunately, there will still be some stigma. There will still be some paiseh kind of thing. Yeah. But I think in general, this mom is really quite supportive already. Even, telling that, hey, you can share with me if anything. Yeah. So there can be examples of like parents that are very dismissive as well.
Right.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then it might not be so safe to share. Yeah.
So it really does depend on the situation and the person's comfort also, right? Okay.
So actually, if the client maybe is going through therapy for a while and they are on the fence about it, whether to share or not, and that can also be a conversation that they can have with their therapist. Yeah, and maybe then they will explore maybe the reasons behind why they think it's important to share.
And on this topic of therapy-client relationship, right? Perhaps I just want to share a little bit about my own personal experience previously. So previously, I had a client who was already seeing a therapist, right? Prior to seeing me for peer support. And I recall her telling me like, wow, thank goodness my therapist is someone that I can get along with. I feel safe enough to open up to this therapist, right? And otherwise, it would be very hard for me to talk to them. And it's something that when she shared this with me, I personally resonated with it as well. So for example, for like red flags, right? A definite no-no is when the therapist, for example, right? I'm sitting opposite the therapist. And then I'm sharing about something vulnerable. And then the therapist is like, yep. to me, that can be very discouraging because it feels like the therapist is not really listening. I mean, that's from my point of view. I don't know about a therapist's point of view. Or it could also be like when, for me personally, I'm not too comfortable with too much eye contact. So like I had a therapist who, when I was sharing about my own stresses, right, they were just staring at me like that, like, yeah, tell me more. So I found it very intimidating.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so in a way, it made me feel really awkward and uncomfortable to like open up about my own experiences with that therapist. Yeah. But on the other hand, the green flags would be a therapist who is very good at like listening, active listening. So someone who is very easy to talk to also, very reassuring. So for example, if I were telling them about some experience I'm having, they'd be like, I'm so sorry that you went through that. Please tell me more so I can understand. Like the tone of voice and the body language, I think matters a lot during a therapy session. And also someone who is respectful of my comfort zone, I think. For example, like, because I'm not someone who's too comfortable with someone being too close to me, like in my space my safe space. Physical safe space, right? So someone who is respectful in that sense would be a green flag, definitely. Yeah. And someone who can adjust the tone to something. Like they're very good at picking out when I need someone to be a little gentler, a little kinder when they're speaking to me as I recall a difficult experience. I think it's very important. Yeah. So just wondering, like, as a therapist, from your point of view, what's it like? Are there certain things you've heard from clients that they are more particular about in terms of their needs when it comes to therapy, and how do you adjust?
Yeah, I think thanks so much for sharing about your experiences. Yeah, I think with clients, everyone has different preferences as well to how their therapist would react to them. Like what you say, right? Maybe, someone who needs a lot of reassurance that the therapist is listening. Sometimes they feel like, oh, okay, that having that eye contact is helpful. Yeah, but for some people, it might be very uncomfortable.
Right.
It might be like, oh no, I don't want to share. I feel like, shy already. Yeah, so with differing needs, across clients, sometimes it's very important to tell your therapist when you do feel uncomfortable in sessions. And having that healthy therapeutic relationship is very important. In fact, in research, right, it actually shows that having a good therapy relationship is even more important than the kind of therapy that the therapist is providing. So like whether is it CBT, DBT or ACT, the client and therapist relationship actually surmounts that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So having a good relationship with your therapist, it might not be a click immediately. So in my own experience, there are clients who actually share feedback with me about our sessions, and I'm actually very appreciative of that whenever that happens, because it helps us to address some of the difficulties in the relationship that we are having, and then also it helps in terms of treatment planning as well. Helps me to help them better in a sense.
Right.
Yeah. So one example would be, there was this time where I was doing an online session with a client, so video call session, and she was sharing about a particularly difficult period in her life. And as she was sharing, she became a little bit more hesitant. It sounded like she was sharing quite openly at first, but then after that, in the middle, she sounded a little bit more hesitant. And so after she's finished sharing, I told her that, hey, I noticed that just now in the middle, you were sounding a little bit more hesitant in sharing. May I understand what's going on for you in that moment? Yeah. So she actually shared with me that she felt disrespected. She felt disappointed at me because I was distracted while she was sharing this difficult period in her life.
Okay.
And I realized that because of the way the camera is, the screen, right, I was taking down notes at the side. But what it looked like to her is that I was using my phone. So she told me that, when I'm sharing this difficult experience, why are you using your phone? Yeah. So I'm glad she actually shared with me this, because then I was able to tell her that, I'm so sorry that, you felt that way. But I was actually taking down notes because I also thought that it was an important thing to take note of. Like what you were sharing was important. And I managed to summarize what she was sharing based on the notes that I've taken. So maybe giving a little bit of reassurance that I was listening, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it also helped me to reflect on how I might look like to my clients when I'm doing that. And so now I'm a bit more mindful. I will preempt my client Okay, as you're sharing this, I'm going to take some notes, okay? So that they know that this action is not me using my phone, it's, I'm taking notes. Yeah, and I think this was very helpful for the client as well, because if, let's say, she were to end that session being angry at me, being disappointed at me and stop coming for therapy, that might not be very helpful for her also.
Right.
Yeah, so through this experience, I think the client also learned that it was okay to talk to me about these things and that I'm open to listening. Yeah, so I think it's very important lah. I mean, most of the time, I think the therapist would actually be quite appreciative of clients sharing their feedback. So yeah, do
Learning curve.
do give it a try. If you do find that there's something I'm uncomfortable with, it's something that you can probably speak to the therapist about and see how the therapist can address. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a lot about communicating with your therapist regarding any concerns that
That's
you have,
right, that's right.
Getting to clarify if there's anything that is making a client perhaps like feel unheard. It could be a misunderstanding. Like the example that you gave was kind of a misunderstanding where you were writing notes, actually you were listening, but client, because of the limitation of being Zoom session, right?
It's a Zoom session.
Yeah, so very complicated, right? Very hard.
Yes. So cannot see the full body. So it's like it's up to interpretation. What does this look like?
Right.
Yeah. So yes. That was a honest misunderstanding, and I'm glad we managed to address it.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. If let's say that you do face some difficulties in the therapy session, maybe I can share a few tips on how you might want to approach that situation. Yeah, so first of all, I guess is maybe, understanding like what happened. So this could be even at the next session. So it doesn't have to be right this session, it happened and then you say it. It can be like after you go home, you think about it. Then after that, you realize that actually you're quite affected by this thing, right? The next session that you go for therapy, you can bring it up to your therapist. Oh, actually last session, this happened. So phrase what happened and then how you felt. And then lastly, tell them maybe a request of what you hope that the therapist can do. So an example would be like, so going back to that situation, right, where my client was thinking that I was using the phone, how she could have approached it also would be like, hey, just now when I was sharing my story, I think you look a bit distracted. I think you were using your phone. This made me feel very disappointed and angry.
Right.
Yeah, I hope that you can be more attentive when I'm sharing difficult situations about my life. Yeah, and so this actually opens that conversation. It also gives the therapist an idea of what the client is expecting. Yeah, so that could be one of the ways that if you don't know how to bring it up to the therapist, this is one of the formats that you can follow, I guess.
Okay. So the open communication, being able to let the therapist know what exactly happened and how you perceived it. Is that what?
Yeah.
Because the therapist may not have perceived it in the same way,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay. So with any service in the mental health scene, right, there comes a day where our clients graduate from the service, right? Like you were talking about just now. Yeah. So actually, even for myself as a PSS, my role is to support the peers through their recovery journey and be there for them until they can eventually stand up on their own 2 feet and don't need me anymore. Like I think we don't want to be needed their whole lives. We want to be able to let go when they are ready, right? Yeah. So I've had a peer who, after several sessions, right, they told me, PSS Nora, I think I'm ready to face life independently now. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, my goodness. I'm so glad that hopefully whatever sessions I've had with this peer has been beneficial and helped them to gain some independence, gain some autonomy over their life, right? And it makes me very proud as like their PSS, very proud and hopeful, definitely, that when I see this happen. I remember there was this one client that I had. He was trying to tell me that he didn't need sessions anymore. And he gave the reasons why. And like from the way that he smiled, I could tell that he was content with how things have gone and believes that he can do it on his own now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I could relate to, feeling very proud of how they are, because especially going through therapy, right, it requires a lot of effort on the client's part. Yeah. So when a client coming towards the end of the therapy, when they're about to graduate, usually I would summarize, help them to see like, oh, how they were like, how the things that they will do to trying to cope when they first come into therapy, the way how things were as compared to now. And you could really see the progress, the difference in terms of the way they are managing those distressing emotions, the situations that they could now put themselves in where they weren't able to before. So those are like signs of progress that we could see. And it's a sign that, they have been practicing those therapy skills. Yeah. So I think a lot of the times, right, at the end of the therapy, the client gives a lot of credit to the therapist, like, oh, you helped me so much and all that. But what I think as a therapist is that the client actually put in a lot of hard work and dedication to get to where they are. And I always tell my clients, I'm with you 1 hour a week, but you are with yourself 24/7.
Wow, I like that.
There is nothing I can do in that 1 hour that would change things if you yourself didn't put in that effort, that 23/7,
Right.
Yeah, and some of the clients I would see once every few weeks some more. So it's not really even once a week anymore.
Right.
And for them to have that progress and for them to really see that change, right, it's really their effort that they have put in. And so I think, I would feel very proud of the clients that have managed to achieve those progress. And hopefully, they would maintain it by continuing to practice the skills right after they end therapy.
Thank you so much, Nastasia, for sharing your wisdom with us. I think by you sharing as a therapist what the experience has been like with the clients that you support, and also how to manage conversations, whether it's with therapists or with family members when you want to let them know that you're seeking support, or what kind of support you want to receive, right? I think those tips that you shared, very beneficial to even myself as well as the listeners, I'm sure. Actually, right, one of the concerns I commonly hear from the clients I support who are awaiting their first session, like for therapy, right, is like, oh, I've gone for the review and everything, but they tell me that my first session can only be in like 1 or 2 months' time, and the waiting time is so long. What am I going to do before I get to meet my therapist? I don't think I can support myself. How would you advise the listeners?
So I would say, like, while waiting for the therapy sessions to start, try to still engage in activities that you enjoy. Most of the time, when a person is in a very depressed state, they might feel like, oh, there's no point in doing all these enjoyable activities because I won't find enjoyment in it. But also, it's a sort of like a paradox in a sense, because you don't engage in those activities, you don't have the opportunity to feel better. Yeah, you might engage in those activities and it might come out being meh, it might come out being okay. But also by engaging in the activity, you occupy some time, and also you gave yourself the opportunity, you gave yourself a try. And sometimes it might be that, okay, the first time you do it, it might not feel as great, but the second time you do it, it might feel a bit better. Of course, if you do find that, you are in a lot of distress, coming to emergency services, calling crisis helplines, those would be more helpful in those circumstances.
Okay, so it sounds like it's important to also take the initiative to keep yourself meaningfully occupied while waiting, right?
Yes, because that waiting, if you're not doing anything, it will feel even longer.
Right,
yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah. So we've now come to the Experts React segment, where we give our take on real online conversations by real Singaporeans. Okay, so are you a Redditor?
Yes.
Okay. So you probably have come across like lengthy comments where people describe their own experiences before, right? Okay, so in this Reddit thread, we have some Singaporean users who actually talk about going for therapy. So let me just read off the comment. A problem I'm facing is the ineffectiveness of my psychology sessions. I think a common practice is to go at least once a month or more. But at the moment, because of work, I'm unable to go for therapy as often as I want. If you've given up on yourself like me, there's nothing they can do. Okay. So I think as a person with a mental health condition myself, right, I can relate to some aspects of this comment because it can be very exhausting waiting for that positive change to happen, right? But as a therapist, if you were to hear someone express this to you, how would you feel? Or
Yeah, I think part of going for therapy is having that time as a resource, because like what I've shared, a lot of the time is me trying to dissect maybe the problems that the clients are facing and then also teaching them some skills to cope. But a lot of that after that is more of like practicing the skills as well. So if someone was very busy with work, a lot of different kind of commitments and not able to commit to regular therapy sessions, right? It's a little bit difficult to see progress. And I think it can be very frustrating for the client as well, because they are trying to squeeze out time to come for therapy, but also at the same time, they are not seeing that progress. It could be a combination of, really the problems that they are facing are too huge for very sparse therapy sessions, like, once a month, once every 2 months, like that. So a lot of the times where you already tried to, maybe in one session, you have talked about your problems and maybe introduce a skill. Within that 1 month, you might have tried to practice it and then you sort of reach a stuck point and there's nobody to discuss. Yeah, and then it sort of stays the way it is until the next time you go for therapy again, and then you're talking about the same problems because the previous problem hasn't resolved yet. So I think with this scenario, maybe alternative forms of modes of therapy might be helpful. So for clients like who are very busy with work, maybe going through, depending on their therapy goals, going through things like online module-based therapy.
Like the ICBT.
Yeah, like the ICBT, the internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That might be helpful because then the modules are quite short. So it's like 10, 20 minutes per module. And then you set aside time every day to sort of practice the skills, but it's a lot more manageable than going to a therapist's office, spending 1 hour there every week or every few weeks. Yeah. So I think that could be an alternative. And because you're also having that guidance with a psychologist, so any issues with practicing the skills can be troubleshoot in a timely manner.
Okay, so we have another comment. I've heard that every therapist's office confirm have tissues because they anticipate people may cry. I only have my own psychologist for reference, but in the sample size of one, it's true. Is it true?
Yes, we do have tissues. Yeah, because in therapy sessions, like sometimes you talk about very difficult memories, difficult experiences. So sometimes tears will come lah. And I think it's normal. It's normal as we discuss those difficult experiences for emotions to show.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think it's healthy. It shows that you are able to be comfortable in that therapist's office and show those emotions. And so, yeah, therapy, it's not always, not every session my clients will cry, but I think it's okay to cry in the therapist's office.
It's a safe space for them to open up, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I remember, like, when I look back on my own therapy experiences as well, like, I noticed that my therapist would, like, for example, when I'm talking to them and then they hear my voice start to crack, right? My therapist will slowly slide over the tissue. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Okay, so I was told that I'd be reported to my next of kin if I admitted to being suicidal, which is not ideal to say the least due to issues with my family. When I told the therapist this, she basically told me not to tell her anything I don't want her to know. So this is kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier, right? About this disclosure.
Disclosing to family members, yeah. In this situation, usually for therapy sessions, before I even go into the first session, right, I do tell my clients that, hey, there are times where usually confidentiality is kept between the both of us, but there are times where, like, if you are unable to keep yourself safe, then I would need a contact from you lah, and who is a safe person for you, a person that you trust. Yeah, it might not be your parent, it might be an uncle or a grandparent that you trust. So I think having that selection of who to give as the emergency next of kin contact is very important. I think another thing is also maybe having that safety plan with the client. So seeing like, okay, you are feeling this way right now, what can we do to help? Yeah, so maybe giving the client a little bit of autonomy on what might happen next as well. Yeah, so that might be helpful. But of course, we need to establish some plans on how we can keep you safe, because if there is no you, there is no therapy anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so that recovery journey requires you to be safe lah. Yeah.
Okay, so here's another comment. I went for my first ever therapy session this morning. I would describe it as tuition for adults, where I gained more insight into my own thought process and learned techniques to reframe my thinking. At the end, I was given homework. I was expecting it to be like seeing a doctor and you'll get better after the consult. But nope, this requires daily conscious effort on my part. Let's hope this saves my crippling marriage. Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite a few things mentioned here.
Yes. Yeah, I think, describing it as tuition for adults might be one way. Yeah, therapy is effortful. Yeah, so that's why it's so important to, be in a place where you are able to commit to that therapy process. Not just the time to go and see the therapist, but also in between session, practicing those, like what the post mentioned, the homework, right?
Right.
Yeah. So practicing those skills, because you take it like, a green field, a green grass field, right? And you've been walking a certain path your whole life. So that path is more bare, right? Because you've been walking that path your whole life. What therapy is doing is maybe teaching you how to walk a new path. Yeah. So as you practice, right, the first time you practice, it might be, okay, the grass got trampled a bit. But as you continue to practice the skill, that new path forms. Yeah. And so that grass patch, that path becomes a little bit more barren. And now you have two paths that you can choose. Your old path, which leads to outcomes that were not very helpful, or the new path that you have tried to practice and learn through therapy. So having those two paths will give you maybe a little bit more control of what you want to do, but it does take time to develop that new path. It does take that time and effort. Yeah. So I think with therapy, it's so important to have that commitment. And it does sound like this poster, he understands that it requires a daily conscious effort on their part. And if they were to really put in that conscious effort, right, hopefully they might be able to see some progress. Yeah.
Well, I really like the analogy you used about the two different paths and the barren path versus the path that you can carve out and then choose between the two. I love that. Okay. We need therapy to learn how to deal with people who should be in therapy. Aha.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I've seen this quote before.
Right, me too. Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like, our experiences are based on who we interact with in our lives, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, negative experiences throughout our lives might make us form unhelpful beliefs about ourselves. Yeah, and these unhelpful beliefs turns into very unhelpful thoughts and certain behaviors that might be maladaptive lah. So it's true that, certain experiences throughout life can lead out to the outcome of us having unhelpful beliefs and then needing therapy ourselves. But I think, having that awareness that, okay, what I'm going through is something that, might require additional help, and then going to seek the additional help, and then going into commit and practice the skills learned in therapy. It is possible to help ourselves out of that situation. Yeah.
We've come to the end of our episode. Thank you so much, Nastasia, for sharing your wisdom with us. I really think that a lot of the things that you shared are things that are applicable to all of us, whether or not we decide that therapy is something that we will benefit from. Before we end, would you like to share something with our listeners out there?
Yeah, I think I would like to share that therapy does come in many forms, and it's okay to not be sure of whether, therapy is something that can be helpful to you or not. If you do feel like, you want to give therapy a try, go through the psychotherapy review process, or if you are seeking therapy elsewhere, speak to the therapist about some of the concerns that you have, and be open to, different forms that therapy can come in, be it like internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy, group therapy, or even online-based therapy. So these forms do exist to fit like different needs and concerns. So yeah, do give therapy a try and be open to it.